The archive rooms are cold, held at a constant low humidity, designed less to preserve history and more to simply retard the decay of official paper.
This paper should, by all rights, have been incinerated decades ago. High-powered spotlights, harsh and unforgiving, illuminate the dusty, forgotten storage units, casting long geometric shadows across rows upon rows of steel shelving.
This is the staging ground for understanding denial, the physical manifestation of sovereign authorities insisting that certain profound, consequential events simply never occurred.
To navigate this space is to tread carefully between the official, sanitized vacuum of public record and the fragmented whispers. These whispers are preserved on degrading magnetic tape and anonymous, digitized data packets. We delve now into the specifics of 5 such operations, black actions meticulously expunged, yet eternally preserved by the indelible traces they left on the physical world. They also left traces in the minds of those who brushed against their periphery. The first operation exists primarily in the domain of meteorological anomalies and whispered testimonies from isolated geological survey crews. It is known only in the deepest shadows of fringe data leaks as Project Nimbus Shift. The focus of this alleged operation was highly sophisticated atmospheric intervention, concentrated over some of the most barren and geographically indifferent landscapes on the continent. This included vast, shimmering salt-flat deserts. The environment itself is hostile to life and documentation, a blinding, flat canvas of cracked alkaline crust stretching to a horizon perpetually warped by heat haze. The surface texture of the flats is critical here, a brilliant, reflective white that burns the retina, fractured into hexagonal platelets. These crunch underfoot like frozen meringue. The air is typically bone-dry, sterile, and thin. But Project Nimbus Shift allegedly introduced a profound, unnatural density to this air. Eyewitness accounts, gathered years later by investigative journalists working off defunct radio frequency logs, describe the emergence of cloud formations. These clouds defied every known principle of regional meteorology. These were not the gentle cumulus structures born of natural convection. Rather, they were churning masses of oppressive density, colored not the usual soft gray or white. They were a bruised, profound violet, blending into an oily, metallic gray. They formed rapidly, appearing to coil and compress themselves against the cobalt ceiling of the sky, seemingly generating their own gravitational pull. The sheer weight of the impending structure appeared to silence the already quiet landscape. Associated with the appearance of these unnatural clouds was a distinct, pervasive scent. It was sharp and immediate, a metallic tang permeating the atmosphere, like ozone mixed with burnt copper, or the residual smell following a significant electrical discharge. This scent became the initial alarm for residents miles away. Following the visual and olfactory assault came the anomalous precipitation. It was not rain, mist, or hail in the conventional sense. The droplets were too heavy, too viscous, falling not in a fine sheet, but as individualized, heavy spheres. Chemical analysis of residual samples, if they can be believed, suggested a high concentration of specific, rapidly oxidizing heavy elements not naturally present in the arid atmosphere. This suggests a targeted dispersal mechanism far exceeding standard cloud seeding techniques. The ground where this precipitation fell changed subtly, the bright white crust darkening to an uneven mottled ash color. This hinted at a systemic chemical alteration of the landscape. The official government line regarding all such reports remains rigidly unchanged. Localized thermal inversions combined with highly unusual wind shear patterns. This explanation created temporary, though ultimately harmless, visual distortions. There is no file, no project code, and certainly no record of atmospheric experimentation involving high-density dispersal units in the region. The silence on this matter is absolute, broken only by the recurring seismic satellite imagery. This imagery shows subtle shifts in the crystalline structure of the salt flats beneath the alleged impact zones. We shift now from the open, burning expanses of the desert sky to the chilling, contained environment of Operation 2, the Silence Protocol. If Nimbus Shift was about visible, external manipulation, this project concerned the profound internal manipulation of the human psyche. The operation allegedly ran within sterile, repurposed institutional buildings, facilities designed originally for long-term care or research. They had been gutted and rebuilt to enforce maximum sensory deprivation and psychological isolation. The physical setting is defined by relentless, unforgiving neutrality. Imagine hallways stretching infinitely, clad in institutional white tile, reflecting the glare of poorly diffused fluorescent lighting. The air within these facilities is chemically clean, circulated through high-efficiency particulate filters, rendering it devoid of any natural scent. There is no dust, no earth, no lingering human aroma. The only persistent sensory input, the constant, low-grade irritant, was auditory, the rhythmic buzzing hum of outdated surveillance equipment. This sound was not the comforting click of recording tape. It was a high-frequency, nerve-fraying resonance. The sound seemed to emanate directly from the walls themselves, saturating the acoustic environment and rendering true silence impossible, yet conversation equally strained. The evidence for the silence protocol is scarce, deliberately fragmented, and deeply disturbing, primarily consisting of stark clinical photography. These images are unsettling in their perfect composition and utter lack of human warmth. They depict vast, empty white rooms. In one recurring set of images, the room contains only a single object, a utilitarian steel chair, bolted securely to the polished linoleum floor. Centered precisely beneath a junction box that suggests an overhead speaker or sensor. The walls are smooth, seamless concrete, painted in an optic white designed to scatter light and remove all visual texture or anchor points. There are no windows, no visible ventilation, only the faint, vertical shadow clinging unnaturally to the corner where two planes of white meet. These photographs were not taken to record procedure. They appear to be calibration shots, recording the degree of sensory neutrality achieved. The goal of the protocol, according to highly redacted internal memos later leaked, was not torture, but conditioning through the systematic removal of all external cues. In the sterile glare, identity fragmented, leaving a silhouette that was never quite solid. Participants, referred to only as involuntary assets, were allegedly subjected to controlled, repetitive stimuli while completely isolated, leading to a breakdown of chronological memory and spatial awareness. The sterile environment was the primary tool. The lasting trace, described by those few who gained access to the decommissioned sites years after the operation was officially dissolved, and, of course, officially never existed, was the pervasive atmosphere. Despite technological removal, the room seemed permanently marred by the lingering shadows of those involuntary participants. Not ghosts, but a psychological imprint. A cold, heavy density that settled in the corners and along the baseboards. Investigators noted a measurable drop in local ambient temperature in specific isolation cells, far beyond what could be attributed to structural integrity or air conditioning failure. The silence protocol vanished from the official ledger, erased with the same clinical precision employed within its walls, leaving behind only the unnerving photographic documentation of enforced emptiness and the persistent phantom echo of a buzzing hum that still haunts the reports of the facility caretakers tasked with routine structural maintenance. Our focus shifts geographically now, returning to the vast, isolated deserts of the American Southwest, where the atmospheric drama gives way to the metallic density of advanced, non-conventional technology. This third alleged incident is known as the Site Omega artifact recovery. The operation centered on the retrieval of aerospace debris, material that allegedly originated from sources far exceeding known terrestrial engineering capabilities. Following an event categorized officially as a severe, localized meteorological disturbance accompanied by anomalous high-altitude radar returns, the stage for Site Omega was defined by the oppressive, shimmering heat haze that rises off the dry lake beds and mesa flats. The cobalt sky above is immense and flawless, but the activity below cut a deep scar into the fragile ecological silence. The operation required the deployment of massive armored convoys. These vehicles were unlike typical military transports. They were specialized, heavy-lift platforms, characterized by dull, matte black composite plating designed to absorb rather than reflect light. Their tires were monstrously large, churning the fine, reddish dust into towering plumes that momentarily obscured the entire column. The movements were slow, grinding, and relentlessly purposeful, executed under the blinding daylight hours when the visual distortion caused by the heat haze was at its peak. Crucially, the convoys moved in silence, shielded by an intense blanket of electronic countermeasures. This was not merely radio jamming. It was a sophisticated field designed to suppress all external electromagnetic signatures, creating a zone of palpable technological vacuum. To approach the perimeter was to experience a physical sensation of deafness and vertigo. All electronic equipment, radios, cell phones, even simple photographic equipment, would instantly cease function, replaced by a low, sickening internal vibration. Satellite imagery from this period, released through subsequent leaks, shows distinct blurred corridors of interference stretching across hundreds of miles of pristine desert. Areas where data simply failed to transmit or was overwritten by geometric noise patterns. The debris itself, the artifact, remains the central enigma. Under intense test lighting, the artifact remains an absolute absence of light. It is less a surface and more a perfect, tangible void, and densities that made small sections weigh hundreds of pounds. The recovery was handled with extreme caution, requiring specialized lifting mechanisms designed to avoid physical contact with the object's surface. The scale of the retrieval necessitated weeks of sustained operation, culminating in the complete removal of the debris, and the meticulous rehabilitation of the terrain, attempting to erase the deep track marks left by the massive heavy-lift vehicles. The official narrative dismisses all reports of convoys or unusual activity, attributing the isolated eyewitness accounts to heat exhaustion, mirages, and localized seismic activity, misinterpreted by inexperienced surveyors. However, the fragmented satellite imagery, streaks of impossible trajectories and data noise, and the lingering memory of the unnerving electromagnetic silence remain strong counter-evidence. Preserved primarily in the digital fringe, where denial holds no sway. The sheer logistical improbability of moving such heavy equipment across that terrain without official designation underscores the immense resources dedicated to ensuring Site Omega remains permanently absent. From the public ledger, the operation was a calculated, deep intrusion into a vulnerable landscape, executed with the technological finesse required to recover the deeply unusual. The fourth operation takes us away from the surface entirely, plunging miles beneath the crust of the Earth into a realm of staggering engineering ambition and seismic concealment. Operation Subterranean City is perhaps the most difficult to deny entirely, as its existence leaves subtle yet unavoidable imprints on the bedrock itself. This alleged project involved the construction of monolithic, mile-deep infrastructure, a vast network of reinforced chambers and access tunnels. Burrowed beneath remote mountain ranges, primarily across the continent's less populated interior. The environment of subterranean city is defined by pressure and darkness. The construction necessitated drilling and boring techniques far exceeding conventional capabilities, capable of displacing and stabilizing colossal quantities of rock and earth. The sheer physical scale suggested in the fragmented data leaks is breathtaking, chambers allegedly large enough to contain entire civilian sectors.
Supported by structures designed to withstand catastrophic pressures.
Ranging from intense seismic events to theoretical above-ground nuclear impacts. The materials utilized in this project are described as central to its secrecy. The construction involved the pouring and molding of specialized proprietary concrete structures, incredibly smooth, dense, and impenetrable. This concrete, cured under immense pressure, possessed sound-dampening qualities that rendered most of the construction activity inaudible on the surface, filtering out the screech of drills and the rumble of excavation equipment. However, this dampening was not perfect. The primary evidence for Operation Subterranean City comes from localized geological surveys that repeatedly and mysteriously flagged deep, unnatural seismic disruptions. These weren't the sharp, jagged signatures of tectonic plate shifts. Rather, they were low-frequent rhythmic pulses, heavy, sustained vibrations emanating from miles beneath the Earth's surface, suggesting continuous, controlled demolition and massive-scale excavation. These pulses were highly regular, often occurring during late-night hours, and their signature was distinctively anthropogenic. Too uniform, too deep, and too long-lasting to be confused with natural tremors. Seismologists struggling to explain these anomalies could only conclude that vast, sustained pressures were being released and contained in rapid succession. Imagine the interior architecture, miles of tunnel surfaces rendered perfectly smooth and featureless, designed not for aesthetic appeal, but for structural integrity and rapid movement. The air deep within these structures would be heavy, cool, and circulating under engineered, pressurized conditions, carrying the faint, sterile smell of fresh concrete and heavily filtered, recirculated oxygen. Access points, according to anonymous sources, were few and deceptively innocuous, appearing as abandoned mining shafts or heavily secured hydroelectric dam service entrances. The official response to the seismic anomalies has been consistent, attributing them to previously unmapped micro-fault systems or routine, localized deep earth mining operations. However, the cumulative data, piecing together dozens of seemingly unrelated seismic events spanning over a decade across 3 distinct mountain ranges, paints a picture of coordinated, continuous infrastructure deployment, on a scale reserved only for the most vital, long-term national security planning. The deep, heavy resonance of the Earth itself becomes the unintended, inescapable record of Operation Subterranean City, a project designed to offer sanctuary from the surface world, yet whose very construction rattles the world above. Finally, we turn our attention from the silent, pressured depths of the Earth to the turbulent, chaotic surface of the open sea. The fifth and final denial revolves around the spectral Ghost Fleet exercise, an alleged offshore intervention executed in a volatile, politically charged tropical region. This operation involved a strategic, rapid deployment maneuver utilizing vessels officially considered long decommissioned, resting hulks, reactivated and repurposed for a swift, untraceable political maneuver. The environment for the Ghost Fleet exercise was chosen for its natural capacity for concealment, a deep, unrelenting equatorial storm system. The setting is defined by heavy water, driving rain that hits the deck plating with the force of small stones, and air heavy with salt and the metallic tang of lightning discharges. Visibility is reduced to near zero, the horizon dissolving into an opaque wall of gray mist and churning foam. The sea itself is a violent, unpredictable element, ideally suited for cloaking operations intended to be executed and denied within hours. The fleet itself was central to the operation's cover. These were not state-of-the-art destroyers, but rusting patrol vessels, relics of previous decades. Their physical appearance was critical to the denial. Hulls streaked with reddish-brown oxidation. Paint flaking away to reveal pitted steel. Masts wrapped in heavy nets of disuse. Their engines, allegedly maintained in a state of suspended readiness, ran rough and loud when activated. But the deafening roar of the equatorial storm system served as a perfect acoustic dampener. They moved as dark, silent silhouettes, utilizing no navigational lights, traversing high traffic lanes under the protective chaos of the storm front. The goal was allegedly a swift political maneuver, a non-traceable show of force or intervention involving the transfer of specific materiel or personnel. Because the vessels were officially listed as scrapped or sold for salvage, their activation in a live operational theater provided absolute deniability. If encountered, they could be dismissed as derelict ships adrift or misidentified by radar operators struggling through heavy atmospheric interference. The traces left behind are subtle but persistent. One form of evidence is the localized rumors that arose in coastal fishing communities. Whispers spoke of phantom ships passing too close to shore, moving silently at impossible speeds. Their decks oddly unlit, but their silhouettes massive and foreboding against the sporadic flashes of distant sheet lightning. Local Coast Guard logs from that period show several inexplicable spikes in fuel consumption at small, nondescript supply depots. Located far from normal shipping channels, fuel allegedly diverted to reactivate the fleet's ancient diesel engines. The most compelling technical evidence, however, lies in fragmented satellite imagery. Even the storm could not entirely defeat high-resolution surveillance, but it provided enough interference to render the data almost useless. The surviving images are characterized by heavy streaking, spectral blurring, and large patches of digital static. Yet, within these compromised frames, analysts have identified impossible trajectories. Large vessel silhouettes moving in non-standard formation patterns at speeds inconsistent with their apparent rust-addled state, only to vanish entirely from the next sequential frame. These fragmented, often distorted lines of movement stand as proof against the definitive, official claim of non-existence. The government insists that the Ghost Fleet remains exactly where it should be, broken apart in a salvage yard or sitting in permanent cold storage. The spectral images and the sailors' whispers, however, illustrate the profound gap between public assurance and the deeply shadowed operations. Executed under the cover of natural and administrative darkness in the name of national security. The investigation into these 5 operations, Project Nimbus Shift, the Silence Protocol, Site Omega Artifact Recovery, Operation Subterranean City, and the Ghost Fleet exercise, serves as a stark reminder of the fluidity of official truth. These projects, whether concerned with altering the climate, conditioning the mind, recovering non-conventional technology, building cities miles beneath the surface, or engaging in shadow warfare on the high seas, share a single defining characteristic. They were designed to leave no trace, save for the persistent, often physical anomalies that refuse to conform to the sanitized, publicly approved narrative. The relentless glare of the spotlights illuminating the archives does not eliminate the shadow, it merely defines its borders. What remains is a pattern woven through disparate geographical regions and technological domains. The unmistakable scent of metallic air over the salt flats, the relentless psychological drone within the clinical white rooms, the stomach-churning silence of electronic countermeasures in the desert, the deep, rhythmic pulse of subterranean construction, and the spectral silhouettes moving across the storm-tossed waves. These are not conspiracy theories. They are the observable consequences, the physical residues, the verifiable sensory markers of events.
That the highest levels of sovereign power have determined must simply, perpetually, have never happened.
They exist in the vacuum created by denial, solidified by the very effort required to expunge them, serving as silent monuments to the depth and persistence of the concealed state. The stories saved on dusty hard drives and preserved in the fragile memories of the periphery continue to wait for the day when the official records finally break their silence.